to create trust like this, or relationships like this with with television for decades. But television was reserved for a very select group of people, not for companies, right? But companies can now do this. Look at examples. Look at what Morning Brew is doing on TikTok.
Thank you so much for tuning into your Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans. This next guest is one of the 3 co-founders and the CEO at Slidebean, overseeing the company roadmap, strategy, and growth marketing efforts. The Slidebean is a venture-backed company funded in 2014 and headquartered in New York City. The company closed its first seed round in 2016 and has since become a multi-million-dollar profitable tech company that continues to expand rapidly. This man has run tech startups since 2011, which have earned him recognition of 40 under 40, plus being a guest speaker in over a dozen startup tech conferences around the world, including the TEDx speaking stage. Please welcome the CEO and co-founder, my friend of Slidebean, Caya. How are you today, Caya?
Doing good, Chris. Thanks a lot for having me.
Well, man, I'm looking forward to this conversation because one of the things that you mentioned here, first of all, you have over 350,000 plus YouTube subscribers, but your strategy, we were talking offline, is really focused on that content strategy. And I'm just curious, before we dive into all the intricacies of it, which we're going to be very, very fun a little bit, but Caya, what are you noticing in regards to the industry and how it's drastically changing? We've heard content creation, but I think the iterations always have to be optimized, the strategies, the tactics slightly. So what are you noticing being on the forefront from maybe 4 or 5 years ago to what's currently happening in the industry?
Yeah, so the reason why we ended up doing content marketing at Slidebean is pretty much a bit of a coincidence. Like as a growth marketer, your job is to experiment on all fronts, measure those experiments really well, and then decide which is the path to follow, which is the path where you can convert the most customers. It's the scientific approach to marketing. I think the role of a growth marketer. I sort of let those efforts for a few years until the last experiment, or the latest experiment that worked really well was around content. So first on SEO, kind of creating a lot of relevant content for other founders, potential customers of ours. And then once we went out of Google searches to target, we moved into the next largest search engine, which was YouTube, right? And it started as a growth marketing thing. Again, very analytical, very scientific. We spent this money on these posts or producing these videos. We collected this money back in revenue. And it's an easy way to do marketing because it's everything is very direct. It's easy to make decisions like that. But as our company has scaled, I think as the world has changed a little bit, I think direct response marketing has gotten harder. Because people are naturally consuming fewer ads because there are fewer places to target them, at least certain types of customers, in this case our target audience. And you've sort of been forced, brands in general, I think are being forced to adopt marketing that's sort of different. TikTok probably being the latest iteration of that. So there's a lot to talk about it.
Well, let me ask you this in regards to this kind of what's happening in the industry. We understand SEO, with the blog side of things, but also leveraging that content as well as kind of repurposing it through YouTube, or obviously I know TikTok is becoming a very big search engine itself for a specific demographic, that younger demographic, which I found very interesting. It actually caught me off guard a little bit, but I love their play in regards to what they're doing there. Kaya, I'd love to help understand, maybe share with our audience in regards to leveraging that keyword SEO kind of focus with deploying both of those, repurposing that content on YouTube as well as TikTok.
Yeah, I think that even I'm an old generation on TikTok, right? I'm a millennial. I'm a hardcore millennial. And yeah, like my use of TikTok was almost, I almost forced myself to adopt TikTok. I'm like, this thing, people are talking about it, I need to start using it. So this was early pandemic, maybe it's gonna be 3 years ago now, where I'm like, and my partner, she started doing this as well at night. She's like, I'm gonna watch TikTok for 20 minutes just to like understand what's happening. So we started doing that. Kind of like, she works in marketing too, so we started forcing ourselves to understand it. Now we do. Now there's millennial focused content. Before we didn't used to have this. But even my use of TikTok is very different. I use TikTok for entertainment. I consume content, but it has truly replaced time that I used to spend on Instagram, time that I used to spend on YouTube, even as a so-called YouTuber. Time that I used to spend on Reddit, like it's moved, right? So like video is bigger than written content these days. Snacks of content have become relevant. Like in our own experience producing YouTube videos, we used to make these videos called company forensics, which were like we would take a company that died and we'd write a short story about it. Hey, like this is this company. This is why this company died. And company forensics peaked around 2021, where where our most successful videos in that regard existed. But slowly but surely, the audience of those videos started dialing down. And I think that our best thesis on why that happened is, well, do you really need an 8-minute video to understand why Juicero died? Probably not. You could probably consume that in a 1 or 2 minute snack of content, short form. Right, so there's a lot of content that we were making that didn't have to be long form, and could be short form. I think another analogy to that is, does this post really deserve forever on the internet, fixed on your profile Instagram post, or is it worth a story? Right? Is it like a simple? I think that content has shifted like that a lot, but more importantly, that has shifted how and where people consume it, and therefore for brands, this needs to. They can't be one step ahead. They have to follow, but they have to follow as closely as possible.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I find so interesting because, with each platform, you're optimizing for that platform naturally. And as there's an evolution of the individuals that engage, the users that engage on that platform, obviously as they evolve and the way they consume, the algorithm changes, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just those micro things that as companies you always have to reiterate. And like, for example, I know with SEO blog post, you can always come in, refresh it, readjust the keywords, et cetera, to make sure that it is ranking. With YouTube and TikTok, it's a slight different play. Not unless I'm mistaken on that, you can't come in when you push it, publish it. If you do it messes up the view rate, and you're noticing like it's maybe not as engaged, organically engaged, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you approach those situations?
I mean, I'm speaking from like the content creator aspect, but as a content creator that has absolutely not figured out TikTok. So I probably stand closer as we produce one longer form video for YouTube, for our YouTube channel. People seem to like them. But I also stand as a brand. Right? I'm a brand. Like I'm not a YouTuber. Like the reason why we make YouTube videos is to promote our own brand, right? But that is kind of like the key here. Like we understood that if we solved content marketing, and if we solved video form content marketing, the benefits that we could reap out of these is much bigger than what we would achieve by paying for it, or by running an ad on it, or by sponsoring someone on it. And that has been sort of like that shift. Does it need to live on TikTok, or does it need to adopt short form content? Yes, we're late. There's a big milestone happening now in this world, where TikTok essentially was paying creators out of their creator fund. They came up with like $1 billion fund, and essentially they're not doing rev share on ads. They're essentially saying, if you can get us 1 million views, we'll pay you $1 or something. So it is some small amount of money like that, but it is coming out of the creator fund. Yes, as a reason to motivate creators to understand that they're the ones bringing value to the platform. But YouTube is launching their rev share on YouTube Shorts in February. So essentially, instead of having a creator fund that just pays creators for the content that they produce, they now they now will rev share on the ads that are run on top of their short form content, which in the industry a lot of people think will be a significant motivator for people to adopt creators to adopt YouTube Shorts over TikTok because they just get paid a lot better. TikTok will probably respond, but the point is there's a lot of money involved and there's a lot of movement happening from both companies to solve this. And I think that more than last point on this before I shut up, that people have become very ad blind on these short form content, even in long form content on video. The ad is an obstruction. It's an annoyance that you have to get over to watch what you really wanted to watch. Right? So what happens when people pay for ads and you can no longer serve ads to those people, especially for high end products, especially for products that are sold to high income individuals. Our case being one. These are founders who make good salaries. They're probably paying to get rid of the ads. So how do you target? That's kind of part of the question.
Well, Caya, you bring up a really good point because, like you mentioned, with the iOS update and a lot of the privacy concerns, et cetera, we've seen a lot of that kind of pullback. So a lot of advertisers, many years ago, I shouldn't say many years ago, a few years ago, man, it was like it was beautiful. You had so many details on these individuals you could really target. It was unbelievable for the direct response. It was like unbelievable. You could just convert. However, like you mentioned, we're starting to see that totally adjust, whether it's for good or for bad, whatever it is on the privacy world. But it's tough for the digital marketing. So that's why the content creator. So I'm curious in regards to, because you dominate the YouTube. So let's just stick on that a little bit, okay? What are you doing? Maybe some tricks, some tips, things like that. Because I've seen, and I've analyzed this, and I've seen some where it's very, very just blatant in regards to their YouTube strategy and their content strategy. I've also seen some that are very, very like dialed in. They have a call to action. They know exactly the funnel, and I'm always intrigued by their top of funnel, what their call to action is, what that looks like. It intrigues me. Of course, I'm clicking because I want to learn a little bit more, and I'm analyzing their structure. So, Caya, what have you noticed that help really? Maybe specific call to actions, maybe different hooks, maybe just different way of structuring the video itself to ensure that you've got a good watch hour, but also getting people to click and get through your top of funnel.
I think that the key to YouTube and the I don't think that a lot of companies think of YouTube this way. But the one thing that you can achieve via YouTube, more than the exposure, more than the brand, more than the extra eyes that are cheap compared to paying for those eyes, the one thing that's really key about YouTube is how much trust you can create between the face of the brand and the viewer. That is super key. It allows you to sell bigger ticket, for example, or it allows you to convert better, or it allows people to talk about your brand differently because they've created, at least this has been for us, because they've created this connection with the person on the other side of the screen, right? Which is something that you can never achieve via blog post. I think you can achieve a little bit of connection via Twitter, where if you're constantly tweeting and you share or share your opinions on stuff that's happening often, you start to see more than just the facade of what you're trying to project, more than what you're trying to sell. You're trying to see who's this person behind it. But what better format than that than with video? When you see that person making mistakes, or you see that person frustrated because something happened, or you see them really excited because something is launching, right? So I think that's a part that that people underestimate on YouTube, how much trust you can create with a person, where this person, some people have come up to me and said, hey man, like I go to sleep to your voice every night because I put your videos and then I fall asleep with the TV on, right? So you're getting into you're finding a way to get into their bedrooms by providing them content that's valuable and or entertaining. So that's I mean, this has existed, of course, right? We've been able to create trust like this, or relationships like this with with television for decades. But television was reserved for a very select group of people. not for companies, right? But companies can now do this. Look at I think examples. Look at what Morning Brew is doing on TikTok, where they've essentially created a persona. I can't imagine how much Morning Brew pays their TikTok guy, because that person is the face of Morning Brew. It's not a co-founder. He's an employee, but he is the face of TikTok in a whole entire new media. It's a super key employee for a company like that. I remember this company called not a TikTok, but it was this company called HQ Trivia. I don't know if you remember this, Chris. It was like this mobile game that launched maybe 2019, where it had like it's like a trivia game. It was live, playing live at the same time. And they had the narrator person, Scott Rogowski. So you would tune in every day at 2, and you would play through 12 questions. And if you got to the end, you'd get a real cash prize. You're playing against 100,000 people to get a $100,000 prize to get to the end. Huge success story, but until the company failed, and one of the reasons why the company failed was because they lost their host, because the brand had been attached to this person so strongly. His personality was really explosive, ideal for this product. But going to other examples, I think of Duolingo, for example. There's no human face to Duolingo. There's some really smart people coming up with jokes to make Duolingo TikToks. But like, this is a way to connect with the brand in a fun way. Like, I think of Duolingo every day now. I don't use it, but I think it's on the very, very top of my head. And if I ever want to learn a language, I wouldn't go anywhere else. Right? So it's not a direct conversion anymore. It's not like I saw a Duolingo ad and I'm going to pay for it. They've earned this by making me laugh every other day when I come across one of their TikToks. But it's on top of mind, and it's achieved via the new content channels that we have today.
See, Caya, I think you're bringing us a really solid point, definitely in the strategic approach to marketing now, because it used to be where, and you look at advertising on YouTube versus, on TV, and you study this stuff. And I found it very interesting where it's like hey, it's about the product. It's going through this kind of streamline. Every ad is like very structured kind of thing. And what you're basically saying is the way they approach it now, it may not have anything to do with the actual product, but it may be something funny or something similar. And then what happens, you associate that emotion, was basically what you're saying. You associate that emotion with that product or that brand now. And you may or may not, want that product now, but at some point now you've always got that, familiarity of like, oh, this always makes me laugh. Their brand is so funny. Their commercials are so funny. I kind of almost a good analogy would be like Geico, right? It's very baseline. That's almost exact same thing, but the way they do it is like, oh, it's Geico insurance, but it's so stupid and so funny. It's not even ever about like the Geico and we cover more, blah blah blah. It's just the same 20% saved on car insurance, but it's some funny, stupid, random thing. And I love that creativity behind it. I want to ask a little bit, Caya, in regards to the content creation. I have seen individuals, and I'm always intrigued. I want to get your perspective on it, where they have that evergreen approach, or it's very trend, hot topics. Now, I've seen both approaches very successful, but you also have to just anticipate the trajectory of each strategy. Evergreen, that's an asset that's going to be working for you. You think about it like real estate. It's an asset. It's out there in digital world. It's constantly going to be producing leads. But if you're doing the trend, you can really see an uptick up to the right. But guess what? It may not have that lifespan. So how do you do like a mix for a brand? How do you recommend individuals think about that?
It's funny. You bring it up. I graduated from college not long ago. Long after I stopped, I took like a really long sabbatical, and then I just went back to finish a couple quizzes I needed to finish. But my dissertation was precisely on this, and I remember reading one of these papers from these guys in MIT that essentially classified content into quality, junk, and quality, viral, and junk based solely on numbers. So how do you determine if a content is quality or junk or viral? Based on a math. And the way they figured it is, it is based on the decay of when the content reaches peak reach. How fast is that decay? And what is the driver of that event that causes it, right? So junk content is usually driven by a really random event, something that you can't necessarily control, and it has a really quick die down. while viral has a quick spike, but also not as quick, but as slower dead of that content that's viral. And then last is quality, which is a slower ramp to the top, but also really slower, kind of evergreen type of content. And I think that you could, I think that for a brand, any of those strategies is valid. I mean, junk content, I guess, is an exception because you can't really control or they determined that you can't really control the scaling of junk content. But viral, this is the difference. Is it viral or is it quality? I think that both apply. Viral is jumping on the trend, doing the dance, coming up with that. You know that it could reach a lot of people. It's less relevant to them because it's speaking to what the brand wants to be. Duolingo, for example, is an end user brand. It doesn't matter if people perceive Duolingo as a silly guy in a costume. It's okay, right? It's a playful brand. They can get away with the guy dancing or not getting into the Dua Lipa concert. But depending on the brand, in our case, our brand needs to project a little bit of more security or expertise. We need to show that we're really good experts on whatever it is that we're selling. So we can't necessarily get away with viral content. So we kind of like go the other way with evergreen quality content in the sense that it's more serious, it's less playful. We can't jump on trends. We can't do a dance on TikTok. We try to get to people through other reasons.
So do you, and you mentioned both are very applicable, and I like that approach. Do you recommend like a 60-40 split where 60% on focusing on evergreen, or maybe 80-20 where, okay, you have some of it sprinkled into your content machine or strategy, but you only take a percentage of your time, energy, and effort and your team's energy?
Yeah, this is a good question because for the longest time we again, I was a growth marketer. For the longest time, we were a direct response focused marketing team, where 80% of our time and 80% of our money went to campaigns that we could measure against conversion. And this was key to our growth, by the way. And I think that for any early stage, that's what you should do. You try and find direct response campaigns, because what you need early on is to get to a base kind of revenue to prove that your business works, that your model works, to perfect it. You need customers ASAP, and any brand stuff is experimental, it's risky, it may take a long time to take in, so you can't get away with that as an early entrepreneur. So direct response was the way, and we thought of it as an 80 in our efforts. But and then the other 20 was brand. Right? It's just brand awareness. We can't measure it, but people, what do we do for people to like our brand, to identify it? We can't measure it. Therefore, we only dedicate 20% of our budget. As the company grew, marketing budget grew. That 20% also grew, but it was a fraction of fraction. Today, the media team, so the people who work directly on YouTube content, make up for about 40% of our marketing budget. So it's grown. It's grown because we've had a big milestone. We've understood how valuable it is, and I think the last part, which was I guess the beginning of the conversation, the last part is because the direct response team has struggled lately to find really profitable marketing channels. So we've been at a good position where we've been able to divert some of that budget to brand awareness people, and still make it count. Even though we honestly can't measure it. We don't know how many people came from one YouTube video or the other one. The only way we can kind of know is asking them, and we get an idea of it, but it's not the final exact number that a growth marketer is looking for.
Well, see, and I don't want to get too off to the metric side of things because, on attribution, I understand that can get really complicated. And at the end of the day, you kind of want to know, definitely if you're a content creator, whether it's a blog, whether it's, whatever channel it may be, or which, if you want to get micro with the video, because all you can see specifically, you can see the views, the watch hour. They got some good data on the back end analytics, but at the end of the day, if you want to know, like, hey, where are these individuals coming from, and how do we optimize and create more of that content? It's just more of really getting that feedback loop for those customers or the viewers or the people that are in your ecosystem. Interesting concept. I want to ask a little bit on when you're building this out, and I'm specifically talking about hot trends, because with long-term evergreen content, you can do a lot of keyword research. You can really create a nice little, developed video, 5-7 minutes long, 1, 2, 3 steps, all that fun stuff, right? And that can be pushed out, and we understand that approach. But with hot trends, I think there's a strategic approach. I want to get your response. So, because I know some trends, some of them only last a week, some of them only last, maybe 3 weeks, and so it's very short. So it's what I'm basically saying is you have to turn that content around pretty quickly. So you create it, turn it around, boom, push it out. What is your way of approaching that, specifically in hot trends in regards to like timeline, and just maybe having the right expectation in regards to our listeners?
Yeah, like we don't. Again, we think of more evergreen content, right? So we normally would not jump on a TikTok trend like that, but we still jump on trends. So for example, our video this week was on Ticketmaster, and this was luck
Yeah.
and trend, where so there was this huge ordeal with Ticketmaster, Taylor
Taylor
Swift.
Swift.
Like, to make a good video, like the way our videos are 20-25 minute documentaries. It takes about a month to produce one, from idea to shooting, photography, and editing and animation to the end. It's about a month. So we knew when the whole Ticketmaster debacle happened that it was gonna that we had to talk about it. We should jump on this trend, but the quickest we can be on this trend is a month from now, and it may be too late, right? So with Ticketmaster specifically, we got lucky because hearings on Ticketmaster's monopoly were yesterday in Congress. And our video's coming out tomorrow. So like, there was some luck there. We had something similar with SBF, which is our next video, the crash of FTX and all of this, where we have to talk about it. It is very much in our scope. People expect a video from us, so we have to do it. But we are going to be sort of late to the trend. Again, Duolingo's game in this regard is understanding they have to churn out a lot of content, probably doing 5 videos a day, right? These are short, cheap experiments that they can turn out pretty quickly, throwing 10 pieces of pasta at the wall to see which one of the 10 sticks.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I love what you're saying in regards to just that really optimizing for that evergreen content. And I think most of our audience really kind of gravitate toward that a little bit, having that approach, because at the end of the day, working those trends, it can be very, very exclusive up to the right trajectory, hitting the viral, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, long term, you don't want to just plateau or like just jump off a cliff. You want to make sure that you obviously are scaling up consistently, and that evergreen, definitely pushing that on a consistent basis. When you
and I think
go ahead.
sorry, just a sec, just one more note on that. I think both approaches are valid. Like, in my space, you have Jason Calacanis, huge investor, famous investor, podcaster, etc. Jason Calacanis has a podcast. They have the session, 1 hour session with other relevant people, and they speak very much on the subject or on the matters of today: recession, investors investing less. I don't know if somebody can go and watch that video or hear that podcast in a year and get value out of it. Probably not. It probably dies out. But in our case, I can. So it's it could go viral today. People are talking about it. People are sharing it. It's super relevant, valuable. It will peak and then plateau. In our case, for example, we made this video on digital nomads, on how digital nomads are sort of colonizing communities in developing countries around the world. It's a video that gets a shit ton of views even today, because it is a topic that will never or will not stop being relevant anytime soon. Much longer to produce, much riskier. You reap the benefits later, right? So both strategies, I think, work.
Well, with the content, and let's loop back over to evergreen. when you create that content, I know, and from maybe this is just naivete, talking. When you touch that, when you go out there, publish it, that piece of content evergreen on YouTube, if you go back in there and adjust anything, it messes up with the algorithm. Is that correct? So how do you make sure that it's, constantly you're able to, maybe modify it or things like that? Because I know blog posts, you can obviously adjust the keywords, SEO a little bit
Right.
every year, every 12 months, every 18 months to kind of, refresh it. So what are you doing with YouTube to be able to do that? Or is it like you have to recreate it from scratch? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a catch on YouTube. Vimeo has this really cool feature where you can truly modify a video, but people don't go to Vimeo. Vimeo doesn't bring you audio, right? You literally can't. Your content's there forever. Sometimes you get lucky, right? So we made this video on early 2021. We made this video on the dot-com bubble, and essentially what we were what we were saying at that time with the dot-com bubble video was that, hey, like some stuff that's happening right now, this is early 2021, looks kind of bubbly. There are some parallels between 2021 with the dot-com bubble and the blockchain bubble maybe coming, or like stock prices going through the roof while we're in the middle of the pandemic. Man, this kind of looks like we might be in a bubble too, but we don't know. It's like, so we don't know. I'm not going to pretend I'm going to predict it. I'm just going to tell you about the 2001 bubble and see if you find your own similarities. But then turns out we were right, and then people appreciate now that on YouTube we have this video dated 2021 that predicted the 2022 bubble. We got lucky, but it's the silver lining of that approach.
Okay, well, it sounds like things are working out. Your situation, SBF and Ticketmaster and the bubble as well. What I found interesting, and I want to ask you because a lot of times I've always thought of content creation very linear in regards to very specific long tail keywords, adjusting that, and very topical around obviously whatever your product and service, so whatever that easy conversion is. But the other day, I was literally watching a documentary. It was about George Soros, someone I don't watch much of, but I was like, hey, I'm intrigued with. And I was watching this documentary, and it was like 15 minutes in, and then they started giving me advertising, and it was like so random. There was like, hey, and he invested it into art, and then he went into Masterworks about art, and this for maybe like 30 seconds, and I'm thinking, wow, that was so smooth transition. I actually had to catch myself, like, why were they talking about Masterwork? But anyways, my point is I'm curious with your content. I'm seeing very creative aspects now with where people are creating this long form content. It maybe has it catches. It maybe have nothing to say Masterworks, why this isn't powerful, invest into art, et cetera, et cetera. But it says here's a documentary about this person. We'll create it for free. We know that it will generate. It's a hot topic, whatever it may be, or maybe it just might be somewhat of an influence like Bloomberg, Ray Dalio, et cetera. But in there they integrate it very creatively with their product or service somehow. Have you found that was an effective strategy at all? I just want to get your intake because that literally just happened to me the other day. I thought that was a really pretty sly way of doing it.
Funny story. Masterworks is the sponsor of the Ticketmaster video. So they literally, in their brief, sort of want to hear what the script is about, and they try to sort of write a little bridge that works as a transition. I don't think it's as smooth as the one you told me, not for the Ticketmaster video, but funny coincidence. Yeah, like I think that we see different ends of the spectrum, right? Let's, for example, the Masterworks or the Skillshare type of sponsor on YouTube. It's a break in the story. It's like, hey, I'm going to stop talking about this. I'm going to talk about this sponsor. Great, good. Yeah, I mean, it's the classic sponsorship, and those work. But we've done others. For example, and again, it requires like this different approach to things that not everybody figures out as quickly. I'm really close with a company called Short Mobile. It's another startup. I know the CEO, and I've known them for a long time. So we were making this video on how SaaS metrics work, like how what churn means and what MRR means, all these acronyms that we use. And I'm gonna make this video, and I'm gonna have to show like a chart of how measure it, right? And the chart that I look at every week is the move. I'm like, guys, I'm gonna make this video anyways. But your chart's gonna be really prominent in the video. let's do this. This is, I mean, we weren't really good at selling sponsorships back then. But let's do this. Like, let's call it. Let's say that you sponsor the video for me, and just give me a discount or whatever. Like, don't bill me for for the next 3 months on the for the iPhone that I use anyway. I think it will work out pretty well. We go for it. Fantastic lead source for them because it's just a platform that, I mean, it's just a hero of the video. It's so naturally integrated into what I'm talking about that you have people in the comments saying, "Hey, what's the tool that he's using? Like, I want to know what it is." Even though at the end of the video I actually talk about it and mention it. So like it created sort of that effect. That's, I think, like a middle where I think that there's a world where a brand and a creator can achieve that integration and talk about a video like that. I think that's possible, but it requires sort of like an out of box of like negotiating on the topic, being able to take a risk on this, right? We do it, and we've been able to go, especially with companies and sponsors who we have a good relationship with. And then there's like the integration, which is ourselves, right? That's the Slidebean brand inside our video, where people just know I'm the CEO of Slidebean, and once they figure out that Slidebean's not just a YouTube channel, like, oh, so what does this guy do? And then that's where you create this brand trust. It's our own channel. Another example of that, deep integration is, and you could do it even as clothing. Now, I'm a big fan of this kind of design, which is like this. You make like photography gear, like backpacks and tripods and all this. Any video where we got out of the office, where we're somewhere, you will see the Peak Design, my shit ton of Peak Design gear that I have. They've never called me. They've never sponsored anything for me. I don't use it anyway. So that's those like deep integrations. I think that is very much where brands need to figure out, like, how to integrate that deeply into the content that people are consuming, not into the ads. Because ads are I'm stealing this one from someone, but ads are like a tax for the poor. You can't afford the high-end Netflix subscription or the high-end Hulu subscription or the YouTube Premium subscription. You will get ads, but the top tier customers, they're escaping all those ads. So how do you reach that? That's kind of tough.
Well, and that's why it really hit me the other day where I started seeing the creativity behind it. Because like you mentioned, there are a lot of times, even in podcasts, you can hear there's a break of some sort, and then, hey, we're going to talk about our sponsor and blah blah blah, and it may not have anything to do in correlation. And I thought that was so interesting. I love the creativity in regards to kind of how you integrated as well in those examples that you just mentioned, because I think that's the approach in today's world, because people are getting so numb to it, because and you got to really slide it in. It reminds me of a really good what I was thinking about the other day was like Transformers, and they're using that new Chevy, the Chevy for Bumblebee, and it's almost like they don't have to say the Bumblebee, they don't have to say this is a Chevy, they don't have to say the features. It's just by association right there, and it's a story as well. And so that's why I'm always just intrigued. In today's world, I'm seeing that evolution of, since we don't have all the metrics on these people and the data and retargeting and all that stuff's kind of going away, we have to get a little bit more creative in the content that we develop. And I appreciate what you're saying. Caya, I really appreciate you being on here and unpacking. I know we could dive into it even deeper, of course. For those that want to reach out to you and be part of what you got going on, how do they reach out to you and learn a little bit more what you got going on, man?
Yeah, man. So most of, like, you can probably tell by now that most of what occupies my head is around YouTube and content. I guess that it's the part that I think that, where a lot of companies need to move into, where our company needs to move into, and obviously where we're seeing a lot of breakthroughs in the stuff that we're doing and producing. Yeah, so YouTube is probably the best way to find us. I think that hopefully if you just search for Slidebean on YouTube, you will find a piece of content that's useful, around business or startups or tech, or stories, company stories, and then just Slidebean.com. Like, I think that as a company, we've also pivoted into understanding that we're pretty good at helping other companies tell their stories, right? Whether it's on a pitch deck or whether it's on a financial projection, it's company stories. I think that's what we do, and it's taken us so long to sort of compress that into like a 3-word thing. What does Slidebean do? That's what it would be. So we have a bunch of, from SaaS product to an agency to actually help people tell better stories about their own companies.
That's awesome, man. And guys, those links will be in the description. His YouTube, his LinkedIn, his website as well. So you guys can consume a lot of that stuff. I would highly recommend it. Just understanding and not only like consuming his content for the content's sake as well, but also understanding how they do it and approach it and analytically look at that, the creativity. And appreciate being on here, man, big time. Just unpacking this and the journey that you're on the front end and seeing how you can creatively leverage a lot of this, repurposing it in all those different platforms strategically. Always love to ask my guests before I let you go fully, is there any last words of wisdom they'd like to share with our audience?
Now, I guess I come from startup school, right? Like the first book I ever read on business was The Lean Startup, and I have it tattooed in my brain. On like this build, measure, learn cycle, and how you have to like do these quick iterations, do these quick cycles of tests, and Lean Startup try to talk about this around product building. When you're building a product, you have to iterate fast. But I think in marketing, it's not too different. And I think that some of our success in that space has been because we've been like that. Because it's like, hey, like let's just make this really quick, crappy experiment, MVP type of a marketing campaign. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Let's just test it out. Only a handful of people will see it. If the worst thing that can happen is that 1,000 people will hate our brand because they saw this campaign and they didn't like it. But that's fine. It's just a handful of our audience. Build it, test it, and learn. And, extend that to teams. Like people come to me sometimes with ideas that I believe are really shitty. And most times I'll try and not say anything and say like, fine, I'll give you 2 weeks to test it. Or I'll tell them like, I think this is a shitty idea, but I would like you to prove me wrong. So go and test it. You have a week. So like it requires you to sort of like think of these quick iterations, and I think that applies very much to marketing, especially in this day and age with how ever-changing marketing is.
Well said, man. Well said. And I like that approach, that humble approach. Hey, this is a shitty idea. However, they'll test it, prove me wrong, and then give them the ownership of it. And if it does work out, cool. If it doesn't, that's all right. Either way, at least you tested it. Caya, I really appreciate being on here. Guys, that is my friend, the one and only CEO at Slidebean, Caya. My friend, Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, be uncommon if you can.